in the next few years, maybe 10, 15, 20 at most, what do you see as one of the most promising and fascinating technological advances to benefit humanity that you will be watching with great interest?
I don't write about it, but genomics. I'm really fascinated to see what's going to happen in an ethical way. This is the big key. The technology, swords and plowshares, guys. It's morally neutral. It's what we do with it. From the beginning of humanity to the future of humanity. So with genome alteration, we could do some incredible things to stop horrible diseases, to create longevity, to create a happier humanity, but we got to do it right.
Don't forget making a Minotaur.
I think my favorite comic version of genomic stuff are the Inhumans, right? They expose their children, their babies, to the Terrigen mists, and then they wind up with very unusual and interesting mutations. And it's only the royal family that gets it, but anybody else who wants it. And then over the decades, of course, people have messed with it a lot, right? And you mentioned this a little bit earlier, the idea of pluses and minuses, right? And good actors and bad actors using genomics. Is there a particular fear you have for using genomics in a bad way? Is in the next 20 years, not like far, far future stuff, but what could we really do bad, aside from, say, creating a super germ that kills 99.9% of us and turns the rest of us into zombies?
Right. Aside from the classic sci-fi runaway bug or runaway anything scenario, I think it's I'm actually afraid of the homogenization of humanity. Yes. I'm afraid that people will think that there's a certain advantage that's preferable, that everyone will start to want that. I'm really interested in the therapeutic value right now. I want to see diseases go away as much as possible. But when we start making the designer baby thing, while on one hand you could argue that it's a moral necessity to create children who will not have the problems of the past, you could also argue that you don't want them to be created in a way that just gets rid of our differences.
Now, Emily, this might resonate with you just a little bit because, as we all know, you have a star
my own designer baby,
which is great. And what I want to ask you, sort of the same question. Let's go with PJ's idea first, and this idea of designer babies from a very personal point of view as you're thinking about the next month or years to come.
Yeah.
And then sort of your idea of what may be a technological advance or some sort of scientific advance in the next few years that might really move us forward in a way that's remarkable.
I think looking at Comic-Con, it's kind of hard to imagine that we could ever homogenize humanity. I think this is my first Comic-Con, and
we have to give her a hand for that one.
It is
all right.
It is amazing. I have never this. I tend to dress like this kind of normally because of my fashion blog and stuff, and I have never felt so underdressed in my life, which is just amazing. And also, What was the question? Technology.
Yes, technology and children right now, but then 20 years from now,
yeah.
What will your child, be doing that we are, I can't work this. Here, fix it for me.
I can't even think about it.
Your child will be like, no, this is easy. Look, this is part of life.
I mean, okay, this is a little bit personal, but also I would not be pregnant if I were born 30 years ago because I had IVF. Okay, and so that's something that did not exist, was not readily accessible in my parents' generation. And it's something if you, ask a handful of women, if you're more likely to do it on the Upper East Side, but if you ask the pregnant women, 1 out of 2 are pregnant using IVF. And so it's actually a fairly commonplace thing, which is fantastic. And it's, it's not quite designer babies. I think it's very, very ethical. But it's fantastic to think about, living in this time when so many things that just weren't possible a little while ago are now entirely possible.
I remember
who knows what's going to be happening in the future.
I remember as a child, the first in vitro fertilized children.
It was a huge
test tube baby.
Yeah, it's actually much.
It was a tremendous moral issue. People were protesting some of these doctors, saying, you are creating Frankensteins and monsters and so forth. And decades later, PJ.
But it's always the same argument. We've had the same argument about the natural order of things, that you could actually just take out the technology, and we've had the same argument since the Middle Ages.
Hey, if you like this, please remember, everything that we do can be found commercial-free, plus exclusive original content, all on StarTalkAllAccess.com.